Welcome back to my channel X-Coin Secrets, where ordinary-looking coins turn into extraordinary stories. If you love rare coins, hidden errors, and unbelievable auction prices, you're in the right place today. We're diving into the top 5 Kennedy half-dollar coins that shocked collectors and stunned the auction world with their massive values. From rare date varieties to mysterious minting mistakes, these Kennedy half-dollars prove that even a worn, circulated coin can be worth thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. So before you ignore that old half-dollar in your drawer, watch carefully, because one of these coins could completely change the way you look at pocket change. Let's get started. Our first coin, the collecting community, a 1992 Kennedy half-dollar with a P-Mint mark, large date variety, and yes, in heavily circulated, rusty, scratched, and downright rough condition. That has recently been valued at up to $100,000 in today's auction market. You might be wondering how a coin that looks so worn and damaged could be worth so much money. And I'm here to break it all down for you in a way that's clear, exciting, and packed with factual insight. Imagine holding a coin that, to most people, looks like something you'd find in an old jar of change. The surface is dark, the edges are worn, there are scratches across the face, and it almost looks like it's been left out in the elements for years. This isn't the shiny, pristine coin you would expect to be valuable, and that's exactly what makes this story so remarkable. The Kennedy half-dollar was first introduced in 1964, and over the decades, millions and millions were struck. A large proportion were spent, saved, or melted down, and for collectors, most pieces are common and only worth face value or just a little more depending on condition. But within that enormous production run, there are a few hidden gems, coins that slipped through with unexpected variations, misprints, or unusual die characteristics that make them extraordinary. The 1992 Kennedy half-dollar with a P-Mint mark normally isn't a coin people would think of as rare. Philadelphia mint coins from this era were produced in large quantities and are generally common, but this specific piece is different, and that difference has captivated numismatists around the world. What makes this coin special is the large date variety. In certain coin series, including the Kennedy half-dollars, there were slight differences in the manufacturing process from one die to another. In 1992, a few large date dies were used at the Philadelphia Mint, creating a variety that was not meant to be part of regular circulation. These varieties are incredibly subtle, often only visible to trained eyes or through magnification, but they are real, documented, and extremely rare. While a coin's condition is almost always the primary factor in determining its value, pristine, uncirculated coins with full detail and original luster fetch the highest prices. Rarity can overwhelm condition when the story behind the coin is powerful enough. That's exactly what has happened with this large date 1992 P. Kennedy half. Yes, the coin is rusty, scratched, and heavily worn. It might even look like something you'd throw back into circulation. But collectors around the world have recognized that only a very small number of these large date dies were used, and even fewer examples have been confirmed. The result: this coin has been turning heads in today's auction market, with valuations reaching up to $100,000. Even in its rough condition, auction records and private sales show passionate collectors are willing to bid aggressively on this piece, because they know that no matter how worn it looks, its rarity and historical significance make it truly exceptional. When this coin goes up for auction, bidders aren't just bidding on metal and age, they're bidding on the story, the rarity, and the thrill of owning something extremely uncommon. For some collectors, a worn but unique piece like this is even more exciting than a perfect specimen, because it represents a tangible mistake in the minting process, a one-of-a-kind variation that defies normal expectations. In a world where coin values are usually tied to flawless surfaces and eye appeal, the fact that a heavily circulated, scratched, rusty 1992 Kennedy half-dollar with a P-Mint mark can bring in 6 figures is a powerful reminder. In numismatics, rarity and history often matter more than condition. Next coin, the most remarkable Kennedy half dollars ever, discovered in 1985 Kennedy half dollar with AP mint mark, large date variety, and in circulated but fine condition. A coin that has recently been valued around $20,000 in today's auction market. You're about to learn how a coin that many people would walk past without a second thought can turn out to be a highly sought-after treasure, and why collectors are willing to pay serious money for it. Imagine stumbling across a worn half dollar in a box of old coins, something you might assume was just face value, tossed aside by generations of people who spent it, saved it, and forgot about it. The coin shows signs of wear. The high points are smooth, the surface bears marks from circulation, and yet this ordinary-looking piece is part of a very exclusive group that has captured the attention of numismatists across the country. The Kennedy half dollar was introduced in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy after his assassination, and since then, billions have been minted. Because so many were made, most are incredibly common and only worth their face value or slightly more, depending on condition. But within these millions of coins, certain variations were produced in very limited numbers, often due to changes in dies, mistakes at the mint, or transitional production runs that weren't meant to be part of regular circulation. These varieties are where the real excitement lies. The 1985 Kennedy half dollar with AP mint mark is one of those fascinating cases. Most 1985 P Kennedy half dollars are common, and collectors don't usually pay much more than face value for them, unless they are in mint state condition. But what sets this particular coin apart is its large date variety. A subtle difference in the way the date was struck on the coin, which makes it unmistakably distinct from the regular date version. These differences are often very small: the shape of the numbers, spacing between digits, or relative size of specific numerals. It's something that a collector with a trained eye can spot immediately, but most people would never even notice. Now here's where the story gets fascinating. Even though this coin is circulated and in fine condition, meaning it shows everyday wear and lacks the sharp detail of uncirculated pieces, it still commands serious money because of its rarity. Condition is usually the number one factor in determining coin value. The cleaner and sharper the details, the more valuable the coin. But there are times when scarcity outweighs condition. In the case of this large date 1985 P Kennedy half dollar, the rarity of the variety means that even a coin that has been handled and worn over the years can bring extraordinary prices at auction. In recent auction records and collector market activity, examples of this large date variety in fine condition have sold for amounts that would surprise most casual collectors. Around $20,000 or more, that's right. A half dollar that looks like it's been in circulation for decades, with worn surfaces and softened details, can still fetch $20,000 because collectors recognize its unique place in numismatic history. So why does this happen? Why would someone pay so much for a worn coin? The answer comes down to a few key things: rarity, demand, and the story behind the coin. Collectors love varieties that tell a story. Evidence of subtle changes in minting process, transitional dies, or production anomalies that weren't intended to be part of the final product. When a coin like this large date Kennedy half dollar turns up, especially in a well-known year like 1985, it becomes a piece of minting history that many collectors want for their sets, making demand strong even when condition isn't perfect. When it goes up for auction, bidders are not just bidding on the metal or the date. They are bidding on the uniqueness, the rarity, and the excitement of owning something few others in the world possess. These are the coins that make numismatics thrilling, the coins that turn heads and make people rethink what they think about everyday pocket change. In a market where most Kennedy half dollars are worth little more than their face value, a 1985 P large date in fine condition pushing $20,000 is truly extraordinary. It's proof that in the coin world, rarity and story often triumph over condition, and that hidden treasures might be sitting in places you least expect. Next coin, the world of rare coins. Something that will make you look at old change in a whole new way. Imagine finding a Kennedy half-dollar from 1977 that on the surface looks ordinary. Worn from years of circulation, the features softened, the edges smooth from handling, and scratches all across the surface. Something most people might toss back into a drawer and forget about. But this isn't just any 1977 Kennedy half-dollar. This is a very special large date variety. And even though it shows wear and tear, coins like this have been bringing extraordinary prices in today's auction market, around $10,000 or more, all because of rarity and collector demand, not condition. Most Kennedy half-dollars from 1977 are extremely common. Tens of millions were made, and the vast majority are worth little more than their face value, especially if they've been circulated. But sometimes within huge mintages, there are subtle variations in how the coin was struck, tiny differences in the design that most people never notice. One of those rare variations is what collectors call a large date. In this case, the numerals in the date, especially the 7s and the 9, are shaped and spaced differently from the typical 1977 half-dollar. It's not something you can spot without knowing what to look for. But once you do, it's unmistakable. What makes this even more fascinating is that these large date coins weren't an official variety that the U.S. Mint advertised or sold specially. They were an unintentional variation, a quirk in the production process that only appeared on a small number of coins. Most went unnoticed for years, hidden in circulation alongside millions of regular date halves. That means that finding one today is extremely rare, and collectors are willing to pay serious money to add one to their collection. Now, here's the part that surprises many people. This particular variety doesn't have to be in perfect condition to be valuable. In fact, the ones that have sold at auction for around $10,000 have been in circulated, fine condition with visible scratches, wear, and marks. Normally, the condition of a coin, especially things like sharp edges, clear details, and lack of surface damage, is a huge factor in its value. But when rarity is high and examples are few, collectors will overlook condition and focus on the fact that the coin is a genuine piece of numismatic history. So what does circulated fine condition really mean in this case? It means the coin has been used in everyday transactions. The high points of the design, like Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers, are worn down. The surfaces show marks and abrasions from years of handling. The luster that once made the coin shine is long gone. From a casual glance, it might not even look special. But because of its large date variety, this worn coin becomes something extraordinary. In recent years, examples of the 1977 large date Kennedy half-dollar in this condition have appeared in major coin auctions and private sales, often drawing strong bidding from collectors and dealers who know exactly what they have. Some of these coins have sold for prices that would surprise most people, around $10,000, even though they show significant wear. That's because there are so few known examples, and collectors recognize that once a coin like this enters a collection, it's very unlikely to be replaced or outdone by another example. When you think about it, that's what makes coin collecting so exciting. It's not always about perfect specimens or shiny uncirculated coins. Sometimes the most valuable pieces are the ones with stories to tell, the ones that survived decades of use, ended up in a junk box or jar of change, and finally revealed themselves as something truly rare. The 1977 large date Kennedy half-dollar is one of those stories. It reminds us that rarity and history can outweigh condition, and that even a scratched, worn coin can be worth thousands of dollars if it's something special. Next coin, the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that most people would see as ordinary, especially when it's in circulated, dusty, fine condition with scratches and wear. But this particular Kennedy half carries something truly special. It's a large date variety, and believe it or not, examples like this have recently been valued at around $12,000 in today's auction market. Even in worn condition, what makes this so fascinating is that the value doesn't come from shine or perfection, but from rarity and collector demand. Think about what most Kennedy half dollars look like. From the early 1970s, they were everyday change. Coins passed from hand to hand, used in pocketfuls, spent on groceries, tucked away in coin rolls. Most of them are common, and in worn condition they're typically worth just 50 cents or maybe a few dollars if a dealer thinks it's nice. But hidden among all those ordinary pieces are rare varieties, subtle differences that only serious collectors can spot, and those differences can make all the difference in value. This 1972 large date Kennedy half dollar is one of those rare finds. What does large date mean? On coins, the date is usually struck with a specific die that gives the numbers a particular size and shape, but sometimes, due to changes in dies, transitional tooling, or mistakes at the mint, a version with slightly larger numerals was used. These large date coins were not meant to be part of regular circulation. They're variations that slipped through and are now extremely scarce. Most people will never see one in their lifetime. This coin I'm telling you about is not pristine. It isn't a shiny, uncirculated piece in a protective holder, no. It looks like it's been in circulation for years. The surfaces are dusty, the high points are worn smooth, and there are scratches and marks all over. If you pulled it out of your pocket, you might think it was just another old half dollar. But for collectors who know what to look for, this coin is something incredible. In the world of numismatics, condition normally plays a huge role in determining value. Coins that are crisp, clean, and uncirculated can fetch high prices, while worn coins typically sell for much less. But when a variety is rare enough, that rarity can outweigh condition. That's exactly what has happened with the 1972 large date Kennedy half dollar. Even in circulated fine condition, examples have been selling at auction for around $12,000 or more, and that's a price most people would never expect for a dusty, scratched coin that looks like it's seen decades of use. Why is this happening? It comes down to a few key things: scarcity, collector demand, and the story behind the coin. Collectors love pieces that tell a story, coins that show an unusual moment in mint history, a die variety that was never meant to be part of general circulation, a rarity that only a few people in the world will ever own. The 1972 large date Kennedy half dollar fits that description perfectly, because so few were made, and because only a handful have been confirmed in collections and auctions. Demand far outweighs the supply. When one of these coins appears at auction, experienced collectors take notice. They know that even in fine condition with scratches and wear, this is a rare opportunity, a piece that could be the centerpiece of a Kennedy half dollar collection, or a unique treasure in a broader rare coin. Set bidders will drive the price up aggressively, understanding that this is not a coin that comes along every day. So even though this 1972 half dollar may look worn and ordinary to the untrained eye, its rarity makes it extraordinarily valuable. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most unassuming coins can hold the greatest surprises, that condition isn't everything, and that history and scarcity can make a coin truly priceless to the right collector. Next coin, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar, a coin that most people would see as ordinary, especially when it's in circulated, fine condition with scratches, wear, and surface marks. But this particular coin is not ordinary at all. It is a large date variety, and collectors have been paying serious money for it. In fact, examples like this have recently been valued at around $16,000 in today's auction market. Even though they are worn and not in pristine condition, this is exactly the kind of surprising numismatic story that makes collecting coins so exciting. Now, when you think of a Kennedy half dollar from 1973, you might picture the coins your parents or grandparents carried in change. Kennedy half dollars were everywhere in the 1970s, used, spent, saved, and then mostly forgotten as time passed. The vast majority of 1973 halves are extremely common. and in circulated condition they're typically worth just 50 cents or a couple of dollars. But hidden within ordinary mintage numbers are rare variations that only the sharpest collectors know to look for. That's what makes the 1973 large date variety so special. So what is a large date? On coins, the date numerals are struck with a specific die that determines their size, spacing, and shape. A large date variation means that the numerals are slightly bigger and formed differently than the standard issue. These differences may seem minor to most people, but to collectors who study varieties, they represent something unusual, something rare that the mint did not intend to produce in large numbers. And because there were very few of these large date dies used, the coins they produced are extremely scarce today. What makes this particular story so remarkable is that the coin in question is not in high-grade condition. It's been in circulation, it's been handled, spent, and it shows visible signs of use. The surfaces are worn, the details softer than on an uncirculated coin, and there are scratches that come from everyday life to most people. This would make the coin less valuable, but in numismatics, rarity can overpower condition. And that's exactly the case here. A rare variety in a worn grade can still bring extraordinary prices, simply because so few examples are known to exist. In recent years, these 1973 large date Kennedy half dollars in circulated fine condition with noticeable scratching, and where have been appearing at major coin auctions and private sales, and collectors are paying attention. The auction records show that these coins have been selling for around $16,000, even in less than perfect condition. That's right. A coin that looks worn and used is commanding thousands of dollars because it's a rare piece of numismatic history. So why does this happen? Why do collectors pay high prices for something that doesn't look special at first glance? The answer lies in something every coin collector understands: rarity plus demand equals value. Serious collectors want these large date varieties because they complete a story, they complete a set. They're the missing piece that most other collectors will never find in their lifetime. And because there are so few known examples, when one does come up for sale, it instantly becomes a hot item. When this type of coin goes up for auction, experienced collectors know what they're looking at. They know that even though the coin is worn, it represents something extremely uncommon. They know that this variety is not something you find every day, and they recognize that once it's in a collection, it's very unlikely to be replaced by something rarer. That's why bidders are willing to push the price up, even when the coin isn't in perfect shape. This story is a powerful reminder that in coin collecting, beauty isn't always the only thing that matters. History, rarity, uniqueness. These are the qualities that can make a coin truly valuable. The 1973 large date Kennedy half dollar is one of those coins. It shows us that sometimes the most humble-looking pieces can hold the greatest surprises, and that condition doesn't always tell the whole story when it comes to value.